Adora. I was actually born in Onitsha and went to the States around 2000, where I grew up in Chicago. And that's where I started to channel my music ability. When it comes to men, I'm just very flirty and fun, and I'm like, you have to show me what you got. Like, I'm not gonna do the work, so. So, you know, to me, it's like, I like this guy. That's what the story is about. I like him, but you have to enter my boat and show me what you got before I give you anything in return.
I think that like when there's a little bit of power given to the little person and they get up, they're like, I don't want to lose this position.
Mm-hmm. But
and they use that and to stay where they are and to keep the person below them down. Because they're like, if you come up, then maybe I might lose my position too. Right. And that's a lot of the time, that's what happens here in the US too. It's a very competitive, like the US is, we think like individuals, right? Versus like countries like Japan or so. Yeah. They're very in unison. They think as one unit. They think, what is the greater good for what we're doing?
Mugabe. Yeah. Mugabe was literally there till his 80s, almost 90s, and then they removed him.
Even the one that was in Libya too.
Exactly. So so it starts.
In 2018, Nigeria was the world's poverty capital with over 70 million people in extreme poverty. How did Nigeria allow itself to have so many people in extreme poverty? That's a loaded question. Unfortunately, corruption is just laced in everything, including the economy, including day-to-day life, and even for Nigerians abroad too. Like, we see what's going on back home, and we feel for people who are born, living, and dying in these circumstances. It's sad because other countries have had the same issue, and they've been able to pick themselves up, hold their government accountable, hold their leaders and hold themselves accountable, and make a change so that their economy and their well-being all around is better. But in Nigeria, unfortunately, the corruption comes in so many different layers that it's almost cultural, to the point where, you know, being impoverished is almost like a crime. I feel as if Nigeria continues to be the world's poverty capital, Nigeria will continue to get worse and continue to get worse. The value of the naira will continue to decrease until we as people take care of each other, hold ourselves accountable, hold the government accountable, to the point where our lives are just better. So many people, according to the statistic, that's 70 million people. In 2018, it's probably more now, unfortunately. According to the statistic, it's almost saying as if Nigeria is the worst place in the world to be poor. The chances of getting out of the poverty is really low for it to be the world's poverty capital. I can't say I have the solution, but I know that the corruption is not going to help. I know that the stealing is not going to help. I know that the looting is not going to help. And I know that for Nigeria to have less poor people, you know, speaking of like financial literacy, people just need to have the basics. The government should provide the basic needs that people need to live, including running water, including, you know, electricity, including the availability of food, including jobs, and even human rights. So it's a loaded question. Nigeria allowed itself to have so many poor people in extreme poverty because we've allowed ourselves to get to that point. Long story short.
In 2018, Nigeria was the world's poverty capital with over 70 million people in extreme poverty. How did Nigeria allow itself to have so many people in extreme poverty? My answer to that is just really simple, and it's greed. I know greed is not something that's specific to Nigeria, but honestly, the level of greed in Nigeria has to be like the worst that I've ever heard or seen or just encountered. It seems to take over the minds of every single person, and even if you're like the most generous person and you end up in Nigeria for just a little bit, you start to almost become like your environment. It spreads like wildfire. I don't really know what it is, but it's this need to have more than the next person or to take all for yourself, almost. I don't know if I'm describing it properly, but greed is I think it's the main thing. We have greed with politicians, for example. They're the number one at everything that's wrong with the country. And I know that me saying get rid of all of them might be extreme, but we really do need to just clean house and replace, and not with the people who are there right now or people who are remotely close to those who are there right now. Just clean house, replace, because if greed starts from the top down, but then the reactions are from the bottom up. So when people at the top are taking in everything they can get for themselves, if support is coming into the country and the people cannot see the support because your politicians and government and local people are taking in everything for themselves and their families, then how can the person at the bottom or below that support themselves? Like, even during the pandemic, we had palliatives that were given and people didn't see that. They were hoarding that in a warehouse. I could not fathom, it was so insane to me. Like, people are hungry and dying, and not to say, people are hungry and dying, they're dying every day, yes, we know, but in a country where you tell people we have support for you, and then you hide the support and don't give it to them unless what? Nothing comes for free, we know that, but when you are in a country where everything is just greed oriented, it's just a deeper level of just desperation that happens. And the poverty level keeps increasing as greed keeps increasing. And if people don't necessarily want to help each other and everybody wants to take for themselves, then the wealth cannot spread. It's just impossible. And I think that starts from the top down. People at the top need to figure out something. I don't think they just need to go. They just need to be removed. But outside of that, people from the bottom also have to change their mentality. Because if you feel like you have to take from the next person to succeed, or you have to steal, from the police officers to the local person stealing cell phones to, not being able to walk safely at night, things like that, they go all the way up. And then you have government who's stealing from the people. Everybody's stealing from each other. How can you succeed, to make anything for yourself? And how can you get out of poverty if it's so difficult and everybody's so greedy enough to do whatever it takes to take from each other? Then there is no progress. There is no upward trajectory. It's just gonna always be where it is. And unfortunately, that's where Nigeria has been for a long time. So yeah, my one answer to that is just greed, and I don't know what the solution is, honestly.
In 2018, Nigeria was the world's poverty capital with over 70 million people in extreme poverty. How did Nigeria allow itself to have so many people in extreme poverty? I think the answer is very simple. I think that it starts from, the resources and the economic value in which Nigeria has. I think that as a country, a lot of the people on the bottom, they don't have the resources, they don't have the government support, they don't have the education to get themselves out of poverty versus other countries who, thrive on the education, thrive on their citizens, being of higher value. If we look at other countries in comparison, a lot of European countries, they support their communities, especially those who are struggling, to try to help them. They give them resources. In the US, those who are impoverished, they get resources from the government to kind of, help them out. And I think in Nigeria, it's a very dog-eat-dog world, and there is basically no support. It's more of a competition. I really feel like we should eat the rich in Nigeria because they are holding all of this wealth at the top and it doesn't distribute to the bottom. And I think that in Nigeria, why it's so impoverished is that there's not a lot of jobs, there's not a lot of work. We're very educated, and it's very limited in the opportunities to work in Nigeria. That's why a lot of people try to leave the country, because there's literally nothing there for them. We have the land, we have the resources, but there's no opportunity. And that's something that Nigeria has continuously done, and it's getting worse every year. Even the value of the Naira has been going down. In comparison to the US dollar, the Naira is almost at 1,000 compared to a dollar, which is insane. And that just means that people who weren't making anything before are even struggling worse now to buy common necessities to sustain themselves within their family and their households. And I think that, you know, we have to look at our government and we have to ask them why that they're not using the resources and the tools that our country has provided to better establish a community and grow from the bottom up. I think that a lot of people just focus on themselves, and if they're okay, they kind of, you know, block out everybody else's needs. And that's something I feel like Nigeria struggles with, and that's why we have so many people in poverty. So I think that's really why we're the most impoverished.
In 2018, Nigeria was the world's poverty capital with over 70 million people in extreme poverty. How did Nigeria allow itself to have so many people in extreme poverty? I think that's a really good question, and I'm sure in the discussion today there are going to be a lot of points about corruption, greed, jobs, things like that. But I think another really big factor when it comes to poverty issues in Nigeria is governance. Before colonialism, Nigeria and a lot of other African countries or territories or kingdoms, they had their own ways of governing their people so that people that are at the bottom don't suffer as much as people at the top, and things like that. So when those systems were destroyed, and when we were colonized and went through our own independence phases and everything, I think that's kind of where we kind of lost a sense of, not a sense of humanity, but a sense of care for others, especially when it comes to people that are in positions of power where they're making decisions, they're allotting money to different programs, and they are, trying to make sure that their local government is doing fine, just like that. So when we look at Nigeria's government, we see a lot of very old men, right? And we see a lot of people that have been there for years. Similar to the United States, we have politicians that are career politicians. They've been there for generations and generations at this point. And when you have people like that in power, who, kind of going back to what I just said, that don't really care about how other people live. They care more about their kids going to the best schools in the UK and the United States. They care most about their wives being able to fly to Milan, Paris, Italy, where else to buy designer clothes and to vacation. They care most about going to the best hospitals in other countries and not in Nigeria. That people like that cause issues for people that really need their help. So I think that when it comes to thinking about why Nigeria is in poverty, I think the answer to that question is to look at the top, and you'll see why.
In 2018, Nigeria was the world's poverty capital with over 70 million people in extreme poverty. How did Nigeria allow itself to have so many people in extreme poverty? I'm laughing because Nigeria is such a faith-based country. You call on God for everything, to pull you out of everything. We're one of the smartest people, also some of the dumbest people too. Nigeria as a whole allowed itself to be in poverty because of the people that we placed in leadership position. And not even starting from the president, starting from your locally elected officials, your local government chairmen, your House of Assembly members, Speaker of the House, and you work your way up to the Deputy Governor and Governor, right? So we continue to apply self-interest when we're in office. Self-interest is, what can I do while I'm in office to make sure me and mine, that could be your family members, your friends, your close circle, are in a good financial position, and you hurt the people who actually need the help. There is no solid or rigid infrastructure in place in Nigeria. And the infrastructures that are in place do not work. And instead of us coming back to the drawing board and trying to figure out, okay, this didn't work, that didn't work, this worked, let's put more funding towards this program. We don't do that. We just say, hey, everybody, you're on your own. Everybody, go figure your own lives out, while us people in government, we eat all the country's money, because Nigeria is a very wealthy country. But the wealth is being hidden, actually, in houses, right? The wealth is being swallowed, right, by snakes, because these are the things that we see in the news. And then the people who are in power, who have the ability to help people who need the help the most, who are, in poverty-stricken communities, they don't help. They promise they'll help. They'll pass out a bag of gari. They'll pass out a bag of beans. Pass out boxes of Indomie, like all of those things during the election times, right? They'll give you 1,000 naira, 5,000 naira, 10,000 naira to rally you to come to their rallies, to go out there to vote for them. And once you voted them in office, that same energy that was applied to get you to come out to get those votes, they act like you don't exist, right? There are several communities who don't even have consistent electricity. Several communities where the roads are in extremely poor condition. Several women and children who try to figure out where their next meal is going to be. Several of public schools that don't have roofs. Several public schools still use chalkboard, and the concrete infrastructure for these public schools are severely deteriorated. There are a lot of kids who you see sleeping under bridges, who are sleeping in the middle of the intersections, because our, again, locally elected officials are not doing their jobs. If you see poor people, one thing you want to consider is, what infrastructures can we put in place to allow, to bring these people out of poverty, or to at least assist. Like, you think about a country like America, you have food stamps, you have Section 8 housing, you have free and reduced lunches in public schools. Like, you have infrastructures in place to address people who are, cannot help themselves. But in Nigeria, it doesn't happen. Nigeria allowed itself to be in this place because we chose the wrong officials. We relied on God, which, again, I'm not saying don't rely on God, but heaven helps those who help themselves. You have to put your own foot forward for God to assist you. So when we continue to elect these old pieces of shit in office, these are the results that we see. No growth. Look at Ghana right next door. Look at the growth that Ghana has had under their president, and look at Nigeria, and look at how poorly a lot of places are. We have nobody to blame but ourselves. The citizens of Nigeria is who we have to blame.
so let's talk about it, guys. In 2018, Nigeria was the world's poverty capital with over 70 million people in extreme poverty. How did Nigeria allow itself to have so many people in extreme poverty?
It's actually very simple. We keep electing the same pieces of shits every single time. So, from the top down, poverty, Nigeria is still in poverty, and I'm not surprised. It may even be worse now because everyone in Nigeria has a mentality of I'm out for myself, or like the people I love or my friends.
That's greed.
Exactly. So that's what it really is. So like, and then there's no infrastructure at all. Like, for example, America, you have food stamps, Section 8 housing, temporary cash assistance.
Healthcare.
Yeah, healthcare. It's still something versus absolutely nothing in Nigeria. There is no infrastructure. When we do have those infrastructures, we're quick to misuse, and there's no system of maintenance for those infrastructures to actually hit and affect the
And the
people
checks and
that really
balances
need
are
it.
actually checks and balances. They're not honest. They also are.
No, they're writing checks and they're balancing their accounts. That's what they're doing.
No, you're right. Yeah, it's getting worse and worse and worse. I think it's getting so bad that even abroad, like, we're feeling it too. Because like when you go home, things are super expensive. So if it's expensive for us, how much more?
The people who are living it. I think dollar is like at one point it was like $1 equals 710 naira.
Yeah, it's like it's almost
From-
800 now.
From $1 to $1 to $1 to like, and it was in the hundreds, and it was $1 to 200s, 300s.
Yeah.
Tailoring is getting more expensive. I'm sorry.
I'm done.
No, it's really crazy. Like you're saying, like even us coming back home, like still coming back with the U.S. dollar to Nigeria, we're still like really enjoying.
Right.
Versus the common people in Nigeria can't even afford common necessities anymore because it is literally outside of, like, some people only make maybe 3,000 naira a month or something. Like, and that's really scraping it. And like 3,000 naira, what is that getting you in Nigeria now?
Not a damn
Nothing.
thing.
Like fuel. How much is fuel to even get somewhere now? Like it's really crazy. These people are struggling, and like it's literally getting worse and worse. And I really feel like really we need to eat the rich. Like we need to just go to these people.
But they're convincing the poor that it's their problem. So poor people are stealing from each other and using each other to try to get on top.
True.
But the rich people are just watching from wherever.
That's true.
I don't know.
You saying?
Is it really, how do I put it? So in the United States, right, we have organizers, we have grassroots organizations that, when there's an issue, they organize and then they rally people to fight those issues. Are they effective sometimes? No. But it's still something. So I guess my question would be, do you all think that something like that would be effective in Nigeria? Or do you think because, just based off of what everyone said so far, that because of greed and because people are more focused on getting on top of each other rather than trying to rally together in order to reach a common good, do you think that that would get in the way of possibly like changing the social infrastructure and like programs that may be in place but just aren't strong enough?
October 20, 2021. It's honestly the best answer I can give you, and that's the whole Eto'o massacre. When
they tried.
When we tried to rally, that's a result of.
But we have to keep doing it because no revolution happens with.
I agree. But the way a lot of Nigerians are not willing to, they don't want to be the person massacred for the next person to enjoy. I mean,
there are people who are like, I'll give my life to the cause. But not as many people as.
But I will say, like with NSARS and such, the global attention that it got really made a difference. And I think that that's what we need to continue to do, is get that global effect. Because I feel like as a country, we can't do it. But I feel like there is even just a slightest bit of change because there was a global eye on Nigeria to be
So
like,
they have to speak
okay,
on
what's
it,
going
yeah,
on here?
tweet about
So
it.
I feel like if
Yeah.
we continue to use that method, we can slowly make progress because a lot of times people don't really care about what's going on. Like it's a trend. It's
There was
a
so
trend.
much going on at the same time as NSARS too. Like
Yeah.
at the same exact time in multiple different countries.
Mhm.
And it was just like which one do we get focus on?
But the difference with poverty is that like so many people, even in Nigeria, they believe in capitalism. So capitalism has like a hierarchy where you have the have and the have not. But Nigeria has set it up that over like maybe like what 70 million people in 2018 were they have like super below the poverty line. So it's like I don't know.
I just feel like Nigerians, they just don't even respect each other. Like there's no respect to even be like I literally, when I go back home, I'm very much in shock at like the labor system. Even the gate men, like they don't even provide proper places for them to sleep. And these people work 24 hours around the clock to open and close the gate whenever you come. Like they literally sleep on the floor of whatever little concrete cube.
But
that
they
make.
accept that because it's better than whatever
But
else.
they accept that because they don't know any better. And it's
I don't
also
think
the
it's
lack
they don't
of
know
knowledge.
anybody. Sorry, I don't think it's that they don't know any better. I think, like you said, that's the best situation that they have for
Because
themselves.
what about education?
Outside of
They
the
do
gate
know
measure,
better.
they don't know
How do
nothing.
they achieve that? The infrastructure is also not set up to help people achieve anything, really. Or
But
succeed.
I think it's still education as well. Like, because what's a union in Nigeria? Like, I feel like education of these matters is important too. Within the communities, those, organizations, infrastructures can teach and be like, listen, this is, understand these methods, understand these standards you should have. Like, and it should be something across the board that a certain standard should be met for different, positions that you're holding. And with that, then more knowledge, you can, kind of start going up and up with that. But I feel like Nigeria, is very much just like, it is what it is type of thing.
Yeah.
And like, people have lived this life so long, there's no point in even changing it.
I think just to play devil's advocate just a little bit, when it comes to the world seeing Nigeria and kind of the things that Nigeria is going through, from poverty to corruption, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't there a point in time where Twitter was banned in Nigeria?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though Nigeria is a democratic country and they practice a democratic system of government, a multi-party system, Nigeria is also very much a dictatorship system.
It is.
Again, they turned off Twitter and was like, you know what, you want to do this? Off.
Yeah.
So if Nigeria wants to turn off the internet, they can. So it's really, really tough because when you do have those people who are ready to rally and organize and help and stuff, usually they get threatened. Because I remember at one point, it was an artist. I think it was Tubaba. What's his name? Tubaba. What's his?
Two-Face?
Two-Face. I had Two-Face. I think it was one time Two-Face wanted to do a rally, and it was like 2 days before he canceled it.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then there's also Omoyele Sowore. Like Sowore has literally been advocating and rallying for Nigeria since he was in Unilag. That was the days of MK Abiola.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Unilag in those days, and he was rallying, trying to get people together and everything. Fast forward to today, he was arrested about 4 or 5 years ago by DSS. He was held in containment for about 2 years. Now he's out, but he cannot leave Nigeria. Nigeria has seized his passport, has seized his green card. So it's just like when people actually want to speak up, all of these measures happen, and then
But don't you think also that things like that are just meant to scare people to not act?
It is, yeah.
I mean, they scare you, but they go further than just a scare.
Because here's the thing, right? So Nigeria is one of the most populous countries in the world, and compared to the amount of people that are living as civilians in Nigeria to people that are in government or in some position of power, it's a huge numbers thing. So it's while yes, these people have money, they have power, they have connections and everything, if enough people can band together and say, fuck the system, fuck everything that these people have to stand for, we need to fight for ourselves because they're not fighting for us. If enough of them fight against the system that is trying to break them down and keep them at the bottom, then I think that with enough work and with enough time, changes will actually start to come about.
I kind of disagree with that. I struggle with it. Hey, sorry, sister. But
what you said is it's good. Like
it's good.
But I also
It's
disagree
good.
too.
Exactly. For me, I feel like, and this is not even just Nigeria, even here, I think that like when there's a little bit of power given to the little person and they get up, they're like, I don't want to lose this position.
Mm-hmm.
But that's
And they use that and to stay where they are and to keep the person below them down. Because they're like, if you come up, then maybe I might lose my position too.
Right.
And that's a lot of the time, that's what happens here in the US too. It's a very competitive, like the US we think like individuals, right? Versus like countries like Japan or so.
Yeah.
They're very in unison. They think as one unit. They think, what is the greater good for what we are doing? Versus countries like US, Nigeria, it's what can I do for myself to get better, to get higher up? And so it doesn't even come down to, let the little people gather, because those little people will soon become the big people and start punishing the people below them. And that's just how it is.
But don't you also think it's because the reason for that is because everyone's been so used to living in this like really capitalistic, toxic society that they don't really know.
For sure.
So if they have knowledge of other systems that could possibly work.
So I think for Nigeria specifically, it starts with the mindset. Every Nigerian is trained on a survival mode mindset.
Mm-hmm.
We need to attack the mindset first. Once we're able to get past the mindset, then we are able to be in unison to rally and riot against the people in power. Like I know Ghana at one point was very corrupt. What happened? Put all those corrupt people in a room, and all of them were killed. So, I don't know who said it, but bloodshed needs to happen, yes. But in order for us to even get to that stage, the first step is the change of the mindset, the change out of survival mode. Once we're able to do that, I feel like we would be able to come together in unison. Once we're able to come together in unison, then we will be able to mobilize, and then we'll be able to speak up as a community. But I also look at it if you look at like North Korea too, right? North Korea is ruled by a dictatorship. Why haven't the North Koreans stood up against Kim Jong-un and his people? It's the same thing. The mind has been attacked, and when you attack the mind, it's the greatest weapon to have. You, as a dictator, when you have the people's minds, it's a wrap. You can be there. I mean, what's that guy from Uganda that was there from the beginning? Mugabe.
Yeah.
Mugabe was literally there till his 80s, almost 90s, and then they removed him.
Even the one that was in Libya too.
Exactly. So it starts with the mind. Once we are able to attack the mind, once we're able to get out of that survival mode, then we can actually see and have an intellectual conversation like, okay, these are the problems of our country, these are the infrastructures we need, and these are the steps that we need to take. And then maybe 3 months down the line or a year down the line, we need to sit back down, revisit, let's look at what worked, what didn't work. What didn't work, we scrap it, but it starts here.
I feel like to solve poverty, it's there's like more than one answer to it. How many people will even be receptive to the message? Cause usually when I go home, all my churches, I don't have the luxury of going to Lekki unless I pay for it or BI. I don't have people I know that's there. Usually that's just where I am. And when I have conversations with relatives, family, friends, blah, 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 it's more of the difference in thinking, like you were saying earlier, but trying to teach someone something who may not be receptive to it because of their current living situation. It's so tough.
Yeah.
It's so tough, you know.
And because you're just thinking of because you're saying that it comes from mindset, but how do you, because it's kind of like in introducing a virus into a small community. It has to spread, right? You have to put it somewhere where you know it's going to spread more. But where do you start with that? So you want to change the mindset, but of whom, where, when?
Maybe start from elementary school.
For the kids?
Yeah.
I mean,
it may not. I don't think it's something that can ever happen in our generation.
But then the teachers also have to have the mindset to teach the kids.
I agree.
So they have to be convinced that this is an effective way, and then teach the kids so that they can grow up. And then, I get it, but kind of from
Yeah.
the birth
Mhm.
to, hopefully we'll get there. But with adults right now, trying to even convince adults that, okay, this is where we should go. And then who's gonna convince them? Somebody here or somebody there? Because they won't listen to somebody coming from here. It's like, what do you know
That's
about
very
my
true.
situation?
Yeah.
You're coming from here to tell me this is what I need to do to do better. Okay, cool, but like, have you been where I've been?
That's
Do you
true.
know why I'm doing this? Do you know how we got here?
But that's why
Even if you lived there and came here, they'll still like you're not.
mentality is still
Yeah.
right.
that's why it's really important to have people that are from similar backgrounds to organize together, because I personally can't talk to someone that's from my village and tell them you need to do this because they might not even understand what I'm saying. Like they speak a whole different language in my village. Like I speak plain English. I don't speak pidgin or anything.
And
So it's like
also remember, like, China basically owns Nigeria.
Yeah, they do.
Like,
It's so unfortunate.
that
That's another episode.
That's a whole nother
that
conversation.
itself is a big issue
That's
of
selling
why,
the
like,
generations.
it influences our poverty in
That's true.
Nigeria as well, China. Like, why am I coming to Nigeria and I'm seeing like more Chinese people in my communities
I'm so afraid of
that are
that.
in
and they're
positions
making
or
videos
job
of
roles?
children and selling it online.
Exactly. Why are they in the job roles? Why are my people not in these job roles? Why are my people not building these infrastructures? Why are my people not having these positions? They're outsourcing all of these things. They're selling their souls to these other countries. And now what? Because you got to chop small money, everybody else is suffering under that. And that's also what is influencing poverty. It's like
Is that greed? That's where it comes from. They're all just thinking me.
That's the mental
And
part.
then you do for you, everybody else.
But the greed is understandable when you don't have much, though.
Yeah, but then
It's
that's
not
the
good,
mentality
but-
for everyone. How do we ever get out of poverty? The mentality will never be able to stick. Like you can't change mentality if that's how it is.
And that's the last thing that I wanted to say, is that Nigeria being the world poverty capital, even though we're abroad, it still affects us. Because if you travel to another country with your Nigerian passport, it's different. People treat other countries' customs will treat you different compared to when you give your blue one or your red one.
What's this? What is this?
I've seen them hold back people for like the Nigerian passport. I was arriving in Egypt. I used my American passport. I was like, whatever, I'll just pay for the visa. I don't have time. I just walked right through. In fact, they didn't even check my bags. Customs wasn't even there. I don't know. But I'm telling you, I just rolled out the airport. I was like, so do I put my bag? Nobody was speaking to me. I was like, okay, I guess it's after 2 o'clock, so y'all closed or something? Because I don't understand. 3 Nigerian women walked me like, hey. They had the passport. No, they stopped them right there. They did not leave the airport. There were people waiting outside because I saw the people outside waiting. They were like, yeah, they're not gonna let them out. And I'm like, why? I just got out. They were like, yeah, but they're coming with their Nigerian passport. And I was like, well, why does that matter? And I didn't know it was a thing until I was like, it's a passport. Is it not a passport? I come here. I got on a plane somehow. So why can't I leave? Like, how are you gonna detain me?
That's how the poverty is with Nigeria. Like, it affects every Nigerian everywhere in the world.
I'm actually afraid to travel with my Nigerian passport because I have to be like, JK.
Speaking on that passport thing, right? That green passport, right? That green passport has actually prohibited me from a very good opportunity because of my dual citizenship status. They were like, "Oh, nah, I'm sorry." And I was like, they were like, "Yeah, you can come back when you have given the passport back." And I was like,
yeah, that's why
it crushed my soul because I'm not gonna turn in my green passport.
It's how you pick one.
It crushed my soul. But something you said, as far as like mentality, made me remember about a Netflix documentary that I watched about the KKK, and these parents were arming their 3-4-year-old children with guns, and the targets were black people, and it just kind of still in that whole mentality conversation, like. If you're a whole adult giving a 3-4-year-old a gun and the target is literally a black man or a black woman, I mean that kid, right from being 3-4 years old, innocent as Lord knows what, grows up with that already. Like, oh my gosh, the black man or the black woman is my enemy.
Racism, kids aren't born racist.
I agree, but I'm saying just like the mentality, they're taught it. So I think that we have to start, no matter how small it could be, we just need to start small with attacking the mentality and starting from the younger kids.
I agree. It's just a teacher. Someone has to teach them.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like that's what.
But
if we find someone, even if it's only a small group of people, right, that we can pilot it with, and then it'll start to break out a little by little. You got to start small in order to get big. But if you don't start at all, then you have zero effect. I'd rather take 50% of something than 100% of nothing.
But also, like, I mean, just teaching children that, oh, Nigeria should be like this, and then not doing anything isn't effective either.
You'd be like, go free into the world.
Like you're not even really like setting them up for success to even change systems, to change, you know, policies and make referendums and, you know, things like that. Like,
And
that's why it's important to act.
Because when they're done with the kindergarten now, or maybe they go to high school, how many of us can afford high school? And then let's say high school, maybe, you know, privatized high schools and privatized schools in general tend to, you know, do a little more. How many can afford private schools and now public schools? And the teachers in public schools, are they being paid well enough to actually do their job properly? Do they have the right tools in those schools to teach those kids? So it comes from like, you have to actually offer all these other things and also the mindset. You can't just give mindset and be like, okay, so what is mindset? Now I have the mindset, I don't have the
There has to be
tools.
some level of
I definitely agree with everybody, and we can keep talking about this. But, you know, we've all come to decide, you know, it starts from the bottom up, it starts from the education up, and it starts from changing that mentality up. So I think we
Also
covered some good
killing
ground.
all the politicians at the top.
Oh, yay! On that note, thank you.
100%.
Thank you.
I'm gonna put them in the room.